Bucky Keeper, or hi gang. This here is the bloom of elder or bazga, and it is just heavenly to smell and tastes delightful, made into wine or syrups, and that's exactly what I'm planning to do. Elder or bazga is very often considered to be the sign of the beginning of spring. The flowers come at the beginning of spring and the berries at the beginning of summer. So this is really the first of my warm weather treats.
Bok, I'm Mandy O. This is Grow, Make, Cook, and welcome to my garden. I grew up in Australia in a permaculture family, but after we got married, Mr. O and I moved here to his home country of Croatia. I am a passionate and hands-on homemaker and gardener, and I love life's simple pleasures. So join me on my journey, and together we can learn to grow, make, and cook.
This is the third week in May, or Svibanj. While it is lovely to be harvesting these and getting a decent harvest of something finally, it's really important to leave more than 2/3 of the flowers on the plant. And that is for a couple of reasons. The first one is the little bugs, like that one, the insects and the birds very often rely on the fruit of elder or bazga in the summer and in the early autumn. So this is a very important plant in the ecosystem of my garden. Secondly, because we like to get the berries too. So I love a cold remedy, which I guess I'll show you later, which is made from the berries of elder. So I want some, the birds want some, but I do want some of these flowers now. So I'm just taking a few, just for right now. I'm adoring the flowers of the kadalya or sage right here in the garden. It is often to me so surprising that people divide up plants for flowers and these for herbs. When this I grow for its culinary uses in the kitchen. I love using sage in the kitchen to spice up my meats and things, but the bees and the insects have just been loving her flowers. She and the chives at the moment are really just performing wonderfully and really adding a beautiful splash of purple to my garden. I adore elder lots of things. Syrup, stewed berries, the lot. This one is something that I have done with friends, but I've never done on my own. So I've got here a glass jar, and I'm going to make elderflower wine. It's they call it wine, but it's nowhere near as strong as a wine. It's more like the strength of a very weak lager, and it's quite simple. The recipe that I have from a friend uses hot water, mostly just to dissolve the sugar. So pop a little bit of hot water into my jar, and then I'm going to add a few big scoops of brown sugar. This is raw sugar. This is to give it a bit of colour and a little bit of a caramelly flavour. So a few big spoonfuls of brown sugar. And then the rest of white. This is plain white crystallized sugar. And this is because when you're fermenting anything, you need to have energy for the yeast to ferment. So if you were making beer, that would come from the fermented grain, so barley and things like that. In wine, it comes from the sugar from the grapes, so you don't need to add it. But for elderflowers, they don't have any of their own sugar. So in order for there to be any alcohol at all in our fermentation at the end, you really need to add quite a lot of sugar. I think I might still need a bit more hot water. And you want to dissolve all that in the hot water first before you go adding your flowers. So give this a little stir, get the sugar to dissolve. Now that the sugar is all dissolved, I'm adding some cool water, quite a bit of cool water, until it's about halfway, well, more than halfway now, full. This means that the water has cooled down a lot. In fact, it's comfortable to touch now. And I'm sticking the whole big bits of flower head in, just checking over them, just picking over them first to make sure that there's no bugs or little stowaways on the flowers. Now, I'm using these flowers, oh, and one more, come on you. It's a little spider who does not want to come out. There we go. But the reason that we can just put the flowers directly in and you're not treating them with anything and not using anything else on them, I'm not washing them first, is that the yeast to ferment my brew is naturally occurring on elderflower heads. So if I was to put these directly into the boiling water, or if I was to wash them first, I would kill the yeast on the flowers and we wouldn't have an alcoholic brew at all. It would just be syrup, I guess, which is nice, but it's not what I'm after. Now that I have most of my flowers in the jar, I'm adding the juice of an entire lemon. Now for this, I've made a slit in it and I'm just squeezing the juice out. I could chop it in half, but I tend to find that if I cut the whole lemon in half, I lose a lot of juice all over the chopping board. So this way, the juice goes into my brew and not all over the place. Give it a really good squeeze, get all that juice into there and give it a bit of a stir. And then I'll keep filling. Now that I'm just popping the last of my flowers in, I'm going to top this up with some water. Just pop these guys in there. It's a lovely job, this. The perfume, I wish you could smell it. I just have to try it at home. But pop the last of my flowers into the brew and then I'm going to top it up with a little bit more water. Give it a little bit of a mix. The idea of this is to make it without very much oxygen. What you want is, well, air, really. You don't want it to be exposed to a whole lot of air. So I'm putting water in there and then I'm going to put a little bit of a lid on. So this is just a little glass bowl that fits nicely in the lid of my jar, and I can see that I need to add a little bit more so that the water sits against the bottom of the bowl and makes a bit of a seal. This allows the gases as it ferments to come out because the pressure will push the little bowl up, but it also means that no air gets in. So that now just needs to sit in a dark cool place. I'm just going to pop it in a cupboard for a couple of months. This is a game of patience. This is a delight that we will not be tasting until probably at the very soonest, the beginning of autumn. But it's nothing like a little bit of planning ahead. Down here by my makeshift cold frames, I have lots of things, and I love this. I love growing things on myself. I love starting things from seed. I like the whole process. And so what I'm doing is taking these little baby plants, which are a bit sore and sorry, and I'm potting them up into pots for summer. Now, I adore putting single plants like this peony, just one to a pot. Now, lots of people choose to cram their pots full of all sorts of different things to make a beautiful short-term display, but that's not what these pots are about. Oof. These guys really do need to come out of their pots. They're really starting to wrap the roots around the bottom. So I'm just taking my fingernails and scratching the sides just to stimulate root growth. I'm not being very gentle with him. He's being quite roughly treated along here. And I'm not worried about ripping it open or breaking it up or any of those things that some people say you ought to do when you've got a pot-bound pot. Just enough to make it go. I love dianthus, or carnations, or pinks, or whatever you want to call them. They're still, to me, one of the most delightful smelling flowers I can just imagine. They remind me of my grandma. And so, in order to pop these guys up, just like this one, I'm taking my freshly washed pots from last week. I'm popping a little bit of broken tile in the bottom. This allows me to poke the bottom when I want to pull these guys out, because I will probably move them into the garden bed or something later. And then I'm just filling the bottom, I would say 2/3, with good compost and popping them in. Oof, he wants a little bit of a tease too, just to get those roots out into the pot. Settle him down in the middle. The nice thing about just having a single flower for a single pot is that it really feels like a feature. This last one that I'm planting up today is a lavender, and he is really pot bound. He is looking really quite sad and unhappy, and I'll have to give all of these guys a really good water once I've put them in their new homes. But I'm giving him a slightly larger pot because I really want to grow him on strongly this summer, so that then I can take cuttings before next winter from this one. So settle him down there and firm around him, and hopefully this will give us a good display of flowers. There we go. That just about does it. And I think that's probably about all we've got time for this week. So if you like what we're doing, please like the video. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do so, and if you want notifications, use the bell icon below. Until next time then, do widzenia.